Chapter 1. Sanchez. The plane was going down, and the pilot knew it. Getulio Sanchez's Cessna had been traveling at approximately 120 knots when the rocket-propelled grenade slammed into its right wing. The explosive charge glanced off the wing before exploding slightly behind and below the plane, but it had been enough to do catastrophic damage to the aircraft. The plane rocked to the side, rising a dozen feet in an instant from the explosion, but losing it just as quickly. Pieces of the flaps and spoiler on the port side of the aircraft disintegrated, falling down to the jungle below. The pressure wave of the detonation knocked control cables inside the wing loose as well, no longer allowing the pilot to control the plane's position in the sky. 3 of the port side windows blew inward from the impact, the frontmost window shattering and sending shards of glass into the side of the pilot's face. The pilot screamed and fell to the side, but recovered an instant later, only to find his plane beginning to spin wildly out of control. He grabbed the yoke and yanked it hard to the right, trying to compensate for the loss of control on the left side. He checked the altimeter, seeing that they were losing altitude far too quickly for a safe landing attempt. Not that there was any place for a landing to be attempted. The man looked out the side window, watching the jungle stretch by in all directions. There was not even so much as a plane-sized gap in the thick green canopy. In an instant, Sanchez knew what was going to happen. The well-trained pilot ran through a mental checklist, his training kicking in immediately. He had flown for the Colombian Air Force, had trained for everything. He knew how to force the small single-prop plane into a stall and then recover, accidental barrel rolls, and even flying upside down. But Sanchez had never tried to fly with a single wing. Heat throbbed on the side of his face where he knew the shards of glass from the blown-out window had landed and were still stuck. Blood oozed from many of the cuts, dripping onto his left knee. The cold air whipping in from the high altitude did little to ease the pain, and as he tried to look to the left to inspect the damage on the wing, he realized his left eye was unable to move. Sharp pain shot up his optic nerve and around his occipital lobe as he tried to wiggle it. He groaned in agony, his hands still clamped tightly around the yoke handles. He tried to force the plane to maintain its lift and heading. To let go now would be suicide. It would immediately launch the plane into an unrecoverable barrel roll, sending it hurtling down toward the jungle canopy. And yet, there was no other option. The pilot finally forced his head all the way to the left, his neck cracking with the exertion, and saw a large chunk of wing missing. Smoke ran in a straight line from behind it, the smoldering and charred pieces of fuselage that had caught aflame adding to the mix. Sanchez knew it. The plane was definitely going down. He had trained for controlled crashes, not so gentle landings, hitting the ground with no landing gear. But he was not sure what hitting the treetops at nearly full speed head-on would feel like. He was not going to live through it, that much he could be sure of. Would it hurt? Would he black out? Or would he feel every moment, as if hitting in slow motion? He was about to find out. The best Sanchez could do now was try to somehow hit the canopy at an angle, and speed, that kept his 2 passengers alive. He heard shouts from behind him, where one of his 2 passengers sat. The passenger was either injured or scared, or both. But whatever the shouting was intended to accomplish, the pilot could not respond. There was nothing to say, nothing left to do but hope for the best. He began to pray. The man to his right was staring at him, wide-eyed. He was another passenger, another delivery, and the pilot knew he would not be making his delivery successfully today.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.